I came all the way to Jefferson, Texas, almost all the way to the Louisiana border to learn about the barbecue that got Texas Monthly's attention 4 times. What I found when I got here, there's a lot more to this story.
We got the best barbecue in the state of Texas.
I am a Houstonian and I love barbecue, but I promise you, Riverport is my favorite barbecue now, and I tell everybody that.
The barbecue is, oh my God.
I'm on a journey to become the best cook I can be. I've learned from the top pitmasters in Dallas, Austin, and Lockhart, from the pastrami master in New York City, even from the king of whole hog barbecue in North Carolina. But I've never met a cook or a man quite like Stephen Joseph from Riverport Barbecue. Nothing I read about him or his food in Texas Monthly prepared me for the tale I was about to hear. So thanks for agreeing to do this and feeding me.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
So before we get into the whole story, what are we going to eat today for lunch?
Okay, we've got traditional East Texas spare ribs, and we got some Lebanese spare ribs. They're seasoned with a Mediterranean spice.
These are the ones that Daniel Vaughn wrote about,
Those are
right?
the ones Daniel wrote about, yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, sir. And then we have probably the East Texas staple barbecue sandwich, and that's our chopped brisket sandwich.
Chopped brisket sandwich.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is, I see fries under there. Is this like Texas poutine?
That's Texas poutine. That's a good characterization of it. That's a bed of fries with some Cajun seasoning, chopped brisket, some bacon bits, cheese, jalapeno, onion, 2 types of onion. And it just kind of works together, kind of blends together and works well together. It's just a kicked up cheese fry, basically.
I'm excited. So what should we eat first?
Let's dig into these sandwiches first.
Okay,
All right. We've got our traditional East Texas chopped brisket sandwich, which is a brisket that's been cooked overnight for about 18 hours, and then we'll rest those till 11 and serve them for lunch. That's kind of.
By the way, I'm just following you here,
Okay.
and I'm putting on, but I didn't see any jalapenos
well,
go
let's
on, but I put the jalapenos
no, I'll put
on.
some on too. I don't want you to feel alone. So.
Okay.
All right, so that's kind of what separates us from Central Texas, South Texas, is that most of the brisket in this part of East Texas is chopped, and that's generally the way it's ordered. People will come in and ask for a barbecue sandwich, and we know automatically they want the chopped brisket.
That's good. This is juicy.
Yes, sir. We don't really trim a lot of the fat out of it or off of it before we cook it. So we chop it in there with some of the leaner meat and some of the bark also. And it makes a very moist sandwich, lots of juice. And then with just enough fat, but putting the pickles, onions, jalapenos, and that barbecue sauce that we make onto that meat, it kind of cuts the richness of the fat.
This is really good.
Thank you. Thank you. That's my favorite.
Let's go ahead and taste traditional ribs on top. There we go.
All right, cheers.
Cheers. This is delicious. This is different than, again, Central Texas ribs.
I think where we kind of separate ourselves, this rub does have paprika, brown sugar, white sugar, a little bit of chili powder, garlic and onion. It's pretty basic, of course, salt, but it's not just salt and pepper or seasoned salt and black pepper. Right. It's different, and it doesn't have a glaze on it.
Okay, so the rub is more of a Tennessee style rub, but we're not
putting any sauce, glaze.
It's a dry rib.
Right.
It's a delicious dry rib. All right, so then underneath, these are the famous, now these are the ribs that got Daniel's attention,
Those
right?
are the ribs that got Daniel's attention.
Oh, wow. Now, when I think of Lebanese food, I don't think about pork.
Right.
But this flavor profile would go with more than just pork.
Yes, sir. I got the inspiration from my childhood. When we would travel, Mom and Dad would always take my brother and I with them. And actually in Oklahoma, maybe Oklahoma City, there was a steakhouse, and it was owned by Lebanese people, and it was called Jamel's Steakhouse. And one of the things that set them apart from just a normal steakhouse was that when you got there, they laid out a pregame spread before the steak got out there. And these ribs were kind of the highlight of that meal for me. They were always seasoned to perfection and cooked over hickory with that spice flavor that just kind of stuck in my mind for years.
That's great. All right, I'm going in.
Okay. All right. Well,
Ready?
cheers.
There we
Yes,
go.
sir.
Cheers. That's really good.
It just works together for some reason.
It does work together.
Yeah.
Is this an East Texas thing or is this a Riverport barbecue thing?
I'm not the inventor of these fries at all.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure there was probably a half dozen restaurants at the time that were putting cheese and brisket on there. But I was the one that took it to the next level with the bacon bits, the jalapenos, and the onion. And I am the guy that came up with a unique nickname for them. And we call them swamp fries because we were on the banks of Big Cypress Bayou.
Right.
And near the shores of Caddo Lake. And that's kind of known for its swampiness. And that's where they get their name from.
I'm a big fan. So do you sell a lot of these?
That is probably our second best seller in the restaurant next to these chopped beef sandwiches.
Next to the chopped beef
Yes,
sandwiches.
sir.
So chopped beef is kind of the center of what you guys are up to.
Yes, sir. Yeah, versus somewhere like Central Texas that they kind of hang their hat on that sliced brisket experience.
Right.
And we hang ours on that chopped brisket experience.
All this talk about good barbecue and, you know, I might be able to survive on barbecue alone. And these guys like to eat a lot of barbecue, don't you? This is Teddy and this is Denali. These are my boys. And they might be the most well-fed dogs, at least in the YouTube sphere. Not only because they get barbecue, but on top of barbecue, they also get high quality dog food. So we used to feed these guys kibble and then we would put barbecue with it. And the reality is that most of the kibble is just not good stuff. Then I discovered Sundays for dogs. So you want to see dogs get excited about this stuff. So this stuff is like jerky. So it's 90% meat and 10% superfoods. You ever see dogs get excited like this about kibble? It doesn't happen, right? So it's air dried, so it doesn't need to be refrigerated. You can pour it right out of the bag and you're feeding them the same kind of human quality food. Now, by the way, we could eat this. I'll be honest with you, I tasted it, it's not for me. They clearly like it. Getting off of kibble and onto high quality food and being able to feed them this air dried stuff. Here, watch what happens. All right, wait. Can you wait, Denali? Wait, wait. Good boy, wait. All right, I'm gonna get a little bit here for Teddy. Wait, oh, we're not gonna wait. As a viewer of the channel, you can save a couple of bucks. So if you go to sundaysfordogs.com/behindthefood, you get 50% off of your first order, and that allows you to get a bag and try it and see how your pup loves it. By the way, it's also Black Friday, and that code works even better for Black Friday. On Black Friday, you get 60% off. Same code, Sundays for Dogs. Did you find some down there? There's more, don't worry, okay? We got it for you. Here you go, guys. I think your pups are gonna be as happy as mine are. You guys like that better than brisket?
We do brisket a little different out here in East Texas than they do down in Central Texas. So first we're gonna start with a USDA choice certified Hereford beef brisket.
Hereford beef.
Hereford beef. I prefer the Hereford brand because it has just enough fat content, not too little fat content, and it's very, very beefy flavored. Kind of reminds you of an Angus brisket in a way, but not quite. The most different aspect of an East Texas brisket versus a Central Texas brisket is that I'm going to leave a lot of this mohawk on. So my first cut's going to be kind of down, and we're going to scoop a little of that fat out right there.
Okay.
Then I'm also going to kind of shift it over and take a little of this fat pocket out, kind of wedge that out.
Now I've seen the mohawk left intact once before.
Yes.
And he was making burn ends out of it.
Yes.
Is that what we're doing here?
No, sir. Totally different.
Okay.
Totally different.
All right.
So I'll work a little bit of this fat here off of it and work it to the edge of the brisket. And then I'm going to go ahead and make my cut down the side like you see a lot of folks do.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of, and this little thing here, I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of.
Right.
So just by looking at that, I'm not messing with that anymore because that's thin enough right there.
Yeah.
Has just enough fat cap. maybe a little bit too little. I'm pretty much done with that side. We're leaving all this. So now I'm just gonna have to start working it over the edge a little bit, working from my right to left. And I'm shooting probably for that famous 1/4 inch, half inch of fat. And I know my indication when I'm getting pretty close, as you can see the change in color from this fat to that fat. And it's this pillowy fat that I want to leave on there.
Right.
Because it will render. And once I make my way about halfway down this edge, I'll go ahead and remove some of this stuff that kind of got discolored at the packer. And I'll kind of round this corner off a little bit. And then I'm going to take a peek this side of the brisket. And that's a little bit too much for me, but not quite that bad. So I'm just going to take a little bit again till we see the white fat.
Great.
I'll be honest with you, I think we're about close to being done here.
So far this is a Central Texas trim, but with a mohawk.
But with a mohawk
close
attached.
to intact.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
The reasoning behind leaving this mohawk attached is because from roughly this point of the brisket on back is what we use for our chopped brisket sandwiches and our swamp fries. Instead of slicing it in true Central Texas style where they slice the fatty brisket, this is primarily used for chopped brisket here in East Texas.
So you're taking the best part.
Taking the best part and using it for chopped beef.
If I want to get some sliced fatty brisket along with my chopped beef sandwich, will they do it for me, or do they chop it?
Absolutely. All you have to do is ask, and we'd be glad to slice it for you. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, we know how to do that, and we'll do whatever the customer needs us to do. We'll take care of you guys.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to trim up these spare ribs. My first move is take the skirt off. So we'll just take a little bit of that, go along like this, along the edge, the back edge of these ribs. And I do want to note that I do leave this membrane on.
Okay.
And it's because I find that it holds the moisture in. It retains the moisture, and you get a little bit juicier rib than what you might get if you do peel this off. I found out in my experience, and I used to do it, I used to peel every one, but it just makes a little drier, maybe flakier rib than what this does. And now I'm just going to take that last rib and just clean up any kind of stuff that might be hanging around.
So this is a good classic Texas spare rib trim.
Yes, sir. Okay. Nothing fancy.
This is hometown that you dream about.
Jefferson is your typical Mayberry town in Texas, small town. Everybody knows everybody.
It's often referred to as Mayberry. It's just friendly, it feels safe, and I love it.
It was simple. That's what it is. It's like a simple life, and it's not unlike Mayberry at that time. Now it has changed. There's a lot going on now.
Airport barbecue that's on the must-do list when you come to Jefferson.
If barbecue can be an entryway into part of tourism into Jefferson, Texas, and people get to understand what a cool town this is, then that's even better.
All right, Al, now our next step is going to be to put together this dry rub, which is a little different than your traditional Central Texas salt, pepper, and maybe a little garlic.
Okay.
So we're going to go with some 16 mesh black pepper. That's probably about 4 cups, okay? Instead of kosher salt or table salt, I use sea salt. Then I'm gonna add about 6 ounces of granulated garlic, about 6 ounces of smoked paprika, a little dash of ground mustard powder, a little bit of granulated onion, and lastly, we're gonna add a little cayenne pepper to it. We're gonna give this a little mix. All right. So my next step is going to be to apply a little bit of a binder. I use straight Worcestershire sauce.
Okay.
Gives a little umami flavor, a little bit of saltiness. All right, so we're going to start here and work our way to the flat, kind of a medium coating. Again, we're going to apply the Worcestershire, and we're going to kind of just rub that around, kind of pay attention to that area right there. You'll kind of forget about it. And again, we'll start at the point. Then I like to kind of make a little lift on the brisket and touch up this mohawk. And then I'll again lift it up on this side and touch up that mohawk. And then we'll start. And then on this side now, I'm going to apply it a little bit heavier.
Okay. So the presentation side gets
Presentation side dust it more. So
Okay.
we're gonna go probably 2 passes on this thing, okay? Now, I'm just gonna pat it in, and I'm gonna take a look at these sides. And I just like to catch it in my hand and just press it onto the edges there. And that is our seasoned up East Texas brisket. And my first move now will be to add a little black pepper to each rack. I just like to give them a nice base coat. And then we're gonna come back with our seasoning, our Mediterranean Lebanese seasoning. So I like to start on this side, and I just give it I call it a medium coat. We'll go medium coat on the back,
Okay.
one time around, and we'll start again with the black pepper. I may go a little heavier on this side, so I may go 2 rounds of black pepper. Okay, then again, we're gonna go with this Mediterranean Lebanese seasoning, and I'm gonna go 2 passes this time around on this side. So anyway, I pat that in, and you can let these sit, or you can go right on either way. So on this seasoning process, we're gonna go on with our rib rub, which is basically sugar, brown sugar, a little bit of dry mustard, cumin, chili powder, black pepper, salt, and paprika. Nothing real fancy. So again, I like to hit it with medium coat, light to medium coat on the back, and we're going to start on the presentation side. And I will go heavier on this side than I did the other side. So I'm going to go 2 passes.
So this is a pattern I'm seeing, that on the presentation side, you're going double
Yes,
layer
sir.
of rub. Is that true pretty much every protein?
Yes, sir. Pretty much 2 passes on the presentation side. Okay, so now we got our 2 passes. At this point, we just pat them in like that. These will go into a bus tub where they'll rest overnight, let it kind of marinate, let this stuff soak in, and then we'll put them on first thing in the morning.
Okay.
All right. Now we've got, we're going to turn to turkey breasts. We've got 2 boneless turkey breasts, boneless, skinless, and they have been injected with a brine beforehand. They come to me like that from my purveyor.
Okay, good.
Okay, so they have a little salt profile already. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a little bit of black pepper.
Okay.
And not a lot, just a little bit. Very light coat. I'm liking that right there.
Okay.
And again on this other one.
Right.
And then we're going to add a little bit of the Mediterranean Lebanese rib seasoning to these turkeys.
This is the same stuff we used on the ribs earlier?
Same stuff we used on the ribs. And again, we're not getting crazy with it, just about a medium coat. We're going to let that sit in there for a few minutes, 20 minutes, while the pit comes up to temp. And then we're going to pop these on the pit.
Okay, perfect. This quiet little tourist town might not actually be called Mayberry, yet still everyone here knows everyone else, and they take care of each other. This was the perfect place for Stephen to build his barbecue joint in the building his grandfather, a first-generation American, had passed down. Of course, that very nostalgia made the tragedy that eventually struck so much harder. Ready to have the hard conversation?
Let's go for it.
January 15th of 2012. That was a big day for you.
That was a big day. For some reason, particularly tired that evening, and I fell into one of those deep sleeps. And around 11:45, my wife came into the room and she said, "Hey, your phone's ringing in the other room." So she grabbed it, answered it, and it was a young man on the other end of the line by the name of Clay Breckenridge. And Clay said, "The restaurant is full of smoke."
The night of the fire, I was sitting at home. We had just finished up a band practice, and I got a phone call from Brian, who's in our band and also the volunteer fire department. He said, "Hey man, Riverport's on fire." And that's all he said. Hung up the phone, and I was like, did I hear that right or what?
As a member of the volunteer fire department, I was alerted that there was a fire. Of course, they say the address, and you know, immediately this one kind of was like, oh no, not Riverport.
I went downstairs, went out the door, walked down the alley, just looking, you know, and I saw the flames and the smoke coming from here. And I thought, oh my gosh, not another one. So I went right back in and I called up Ed Joseph, Stephen's father.
Yeah.
And I said, "Ed, Riverport's on fire."
Jumped up and got down here, parked right over here across the street. You could see smoke coming out, but when I got here, I'm looking at the building and I'm like, well, the building's still here. So evidently they caught it in time. Stephen was right here on the side of the building, walking around, just wondering. I talked to Stephen briefly, just kind of said, hey man, what's going on? He said, man, I don't know, but it's not good. And so we just kind of backed off and waited.
And it was a scary event. We were over at our store, fire trucks and all the crowds around. It was very scary. It was a scary night.
The first person I see there is my childhood friend and my old next door neighbor, Brian Smith, who was on a 18-foot ladder on the side of that old building, and I could see flames coming out of the top of it.
I remember standing on a ladder outside the building for, I'm gonna say I was on top of the ladder for about an 8-hour spotting for the guys on the, you know, on the other buildings who were running hoses and trying to put the fire out. Had guys inside until it became too unsafe.
So I went into the back door of the restaurant, and I'm trying to grab all that I could grab out of there to get out. There was a lot of family mementos in there, old photos, because my family owned that business, that building since 1948, 1950, somewhere around. So there was a lot of history in that building. And I grew up in that building. My dad grew up in that building. I mean, there was, you know, not a family memory we had that wasn't, you know, in that building.
He's quiet, but, you know, you could tell it was tearing him up inside.
The fire was extremely difficult to fight. There were several attics.
So around 1:30 in the morning, I walked back in the back door, and I'm standing next to a man by the name of Johnny Newville. And he's standing there with his pike pole and his bunker gear. And about that time, he took his pike pole and he pressed through the sheetrock ceiling above his head. And when he did, it looked like the gates of hell opened up. I mean, all you could see was just the red embers from the pine studs up there just on fire in that old attic. And I didn't know this until Brian let me know that there was layer upon layer built on top of that old building of attics.
Of course, we can't climb an attic to fight fire, but it just was one of those things that was impossible for us to get to the source.
So there was 2 or 3 attics that was built out of this old pine wood or old cypress wood. And this stuff was just dry. It was just like kindling stacked in there. So that fire went from the back of the building to the front of the building instantly. And when it did, Johnny turned to me and he said, it's time for us to get out of here.
I don't remember exactly at what point, but there was a point at which I felt the wall move. It's all masonry brick walls. I felt the wall moving, and I knew at that point that it was probably, that the roof was about to fall. Something was giving away and shaking that masonry wall. And so I came off the ladder.
So we exited out of the back door. We heard just a god-awful popping sound, and the roof folded into a V, and the entire thing fell inside that building. And when it hit, my old glass windows of that old store just blew out everywhere. Flames just rolled out onto the awning. And it was at that point I had to finally just go sit down in the truck and have one of those WTF moments by myself, just kind of get myself together. And they finally got the flames put out around dawn, and I had no sleep. My wife was upset, my child was crying, my parents were
Take a breath.
They were crying. That was the hardest part. Knowing that my dad has lost so much of his childhood and his memories. And I felt responsible for it. It wasn't my fault. I mean, it was an electrical fire. Nothing I could do about it. But I felt responsible for it. I had to live with that guilt for a few weeks.
All we could do was look at it, and he looked so sad when I look over at him. It was hard, it hurt. It really did hurt.
Finally got home, got some rest, got kind of settled down, and for about 2 weeks, I sat on that couch with that guilt on my chest, on my back, you know, just weighing on me. And hadn't it been for my wife, I never would have everybody got off their couch and got going again. Because I was always raised tough, and I was always raised to be a man, but that was a blow to watch them hurt like that.
Being that he basically grew up in this building, his father grew up in this building, his grandparents owned it, it kind of tore him down. He didn't know how to proceed. He'd never been through anything like that, which I hadn't either, and I guess it was kind of hard for him to wrap his head around.
He's pretty down, you know, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do. Was it a sign that, you know, he needed to go the next step in life, find something else to do, you know, move on?
He just didn't know what to do. It's not that he fought me, he just really didn't know how to proceed.
Of course, the situation weighed heavily on our hero. And this hole just seemed so deep, there was no way for him to crawl out of it by himself. As luck would have it, Stephen had not only a strong family to pull him up, but a whole town who grabbed him by the bootstraps and chipped in and helped.
The fire occurred while I was chief of police here. And that just devastated the whole town.
The community was shocked that something like this had happened, and it was a lot of sympathy toward he and his family about the loss of a business. And of course there was lots of discussion about how can we help, what can we do, what's your plans, and so forth.
No, I just had to keep pushing. I had to take the lead.
You got to get out this house and go find something to do. I finding something to do was go bust concrete with a sledgehammer. So I busted concrete down there, and we got the slab cleared off, and that kind of gave me a little momentum and think about things, and people would come by, hey man, you gonna rebuild? Yeah, I think we are. I think we are.
Vaguely remember saying, we're gonna fix this. So the first thing in my mind is we gotta get this thing back going. I mean, I don't know what it's gonna take. To be honest, I don't know if he would have necessarily picked me to help do that. I don't think it ever crossed my mind that it was gonna be different. I just said, we're doing this. This is terrible, let's fix it. I'm calling these people and we're gonna get this thing started. We're starting tomorrow.
I spoke with Brian Smith, the firefighter who was on the ladder, and Brian was, like I said, my neighbor, and he wasn't going through the easiest time himself at that point in his life. And I told Brian, I said, there's nobody else in the world I'd rather have help rebuild this thing than you, and he agreed. So Brian and I had a handshake agreement, no contract, no nothing, that he was gonna, as soon as Ronnie got the metal frame, Ronnie is my father-in-law, so as soon as Ronnie got that metal frame built, that he was gonna come in there and help me finish that thing out. Okay, we're gonna place this brisket, and again, I place them as far away from the fireboxes as I can. Bigger ones go to the back, smaller ones will go to the front.
So now we get the rest of the briskets and finish loading it up?
Yes, sir, we'll load it up. We'll go all the way across the top. Bigger ones will go toward the firebox, smaller ones back this way.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. I'm going to set this fire up to run low and slow overnight around 200 degrees. I'm going to set these logs in here kind of like Cooper at bar-a-bbq showed you how.
Okay.
So we're going to put these in here tight. And I'm not using any gloves, Cooper. So. All right, so we're going to stack them in here as tightly as we can to minimize the airflow that gets between them. And I would continue on all the way up to the top until this firebox is full in that style right there. And it's going to run 200 degrees all night up here on this top shelf until I get back here around 5 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And that's going to be probably an 18-hour cook total.
So this explains how you got so much smoke and so much bark on that brisket.
That's exactly right, because we're just pushing smoke, air, and heat across that thing, and it'll bark up really nice, and then we'll be able to finish them off in the morning.
Okay, nice.
Once we got started, he was okay with it. He was in here just about every day hands-on, but he had to be, because, you know, it was a big project. And he did a lot of it. He did trenches. He did the trenches alongside the building for new plumbing. He tried to help my dad with footers. I mean, so he had to be really hands-on. So he put blood, sweat, and tears into this once he got motivated.
But it's just the fact that the whole community would not accept him quitting.
After the fire, When he decided to get it back going, you could see determination. It was night and day. You know, it was, all right, playtime's over, I got to go.
Tunnel vision. Yeah, definite tunnel vision on getting it back going.
He knew he had to get this thing up and running and get it back going. And once he did, he really did a U-turn as far as how he approached it. It was mainly him doing everything. From opening to close, he was here. Long days, early mornings, days I would get up and go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning and pass by here. He's already been here an hour and a half. On the weekend, you might see him at 10 o'clock. He says, I'm gonna run home, get a shower real quick and get back up here because we open at 11. He was just so focused and determined to get this thing back going and get it back open, not only for him and his family, but for the community as well.
All right, so we get here this morning, it's about 5:30 in the morning. These briskets went on about 3:30 yesterday afternoon, so we're looking at about 14-hour cook. Last night around 8 o'clock, I stacked the pit with some hickory wood. We put about 6 to 8 logs on here, and this pit held to 200 degrees overnight in a 38-degree night, so we did pretty good there.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just looking at the color first and the bark, make sure it's set, and the feel, kind of got that marshmallowy, pillowy feel to them. I know up here that I'm in that 170. This is about 5 degrees off, this thermometer is, so I know I'm in that 174, 175 range. Anywhere from 175 to 180 is where I kind of like to wrap these up. So at this point, we're going to wrap them. I'm going to do 2 sheets per brisket.
Okay.
What I like to do is just kind of form a seam here.
Okay.
And press it down over here and do the same on this side.
So we're not putting any tallow and nothing.
No,
This
sir.
is good old school Texas crutch.
Texas crutch.
Okay.
Then I like to kind of press down and push out any air pockets and make sure the foil is a little tighter to the brisket that way. So,
Great.
All right, then I'll start moving these a little closer over this direction. Okay, we're gonna go on with these. I'm gonna put these a little closer to the firebox. They're gonna cook around 275, 300. I just find that with this style of rub with no sugar, you can put these a little closer to the firebox and not have to worry about these things burning up a little bit. So the bigger one, I'm gonna go closer to the firebox. I'll put the thicker side toward the fire. And then this thinner rack, we're gonna put it right next to it. Again, it'll probably cook about 275, 300 degrees. And probably 3 or 4 hours, we'll come back and get them off the pit.
So 3 hours we'll have ribs. We're not, this is not a
Pretty
5
close.
or 6 hour.
No,
cook.
it'll be, they'll be ready at 11.
Great.
11:30ish, somewhere around. Yeah, we'll be good. Okay, so these have been dry rubbed, set in the cooler overnight, and kind of let them marinate. And we're gonna start putting these guys on. And I put the, now this is the way I was taught years ago by Mr. Victor Williams, is to put the thicker end of the rib, the bone side, the thicker bone side, to the back of the pit. Is that I'm going to place these in a foil pan. It'll hold all that good juice in. And then we're going to tuck these down here close to the firebox. Let them get a little heat. When these are done, these will go up. So that's where they'll finish off. All right, so right now we're done.
How long do you have to close for?
We were down almost 8 months, and we pushed it to get done under the 8-month time schedule. I was $40,000 short of being able to finish it out. At one point, I was down to my last $287 of personal money. And one afternoon, I was the last one out of the building. At that point, we already had a frame, door, everything like that. So I'd walked out, I'd parked my vehicle in front of the restaurant there and went home. Well, when I got home, I knew I took $287 with me to work. And I reached in my pocket to put it in my normal spot where I put my cap and my money and everything. No money. So I went back out and looked at my vehicle. No money. Backtracked, no money. Went back down to the restaurant. I pulled up in the exact parking spot where I was, and I hop out, and I began looking in the curb, on the sidewalk, in the curb, no money. And all of a sudden I hear this voice from across the street. And he said, "Sir, are you looking for something?" I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And that man, who I'd never seen before, he reached in his pocket and handed me that $287. He said, "I saw it when it fell out." And he said, "I knew you'd be back. So I sat on this bench and waited on you." And he handed me that money back, and I shook his hand, thanked him, and told him, you know, when we get reopened, you know, lunch is on me. And he handed me that money back. He said, "I'm sorry, but you probably won't ever see me again." And by the time I turned back around, he vanished. And I've never seen him again before. And you tell me somebody wasn't looking out for me at that point, because that was the guardian angel right there looking out for me. And like I said, never seen the man before, and I hope I see him again one day, but that was just a strange, weird situation. And that just goes to show you, you know, you gotta have faith and put your priorities in the right place. And it was nothing short of a miracle. So that helped me pay a few more bills until we got the place ready to open.
Of course, there was lots of discussion about how can we help, what can we do, what's your plans, and so forth.
You know, all these people I thought were self-interested, whatever. You know, when I came home, I kind of had already changed my opinion about how all that worked. But just to see these people going, okay, what do you need? I mean, I'm not talking about, hey, we'll go to Brookshire's and buy you some toilet paper. I mean, what do you need? Let's get stuff going. That, I think, probably was a bigger impact, in my opinion, than the actual fire, the devastation, him being depressed. I think just the fact that everybody treated it as the disaster it was and chipped in, and I mean almost everybody participated in trying to get this guy back on his feet again.
We had talked with him, it's like, all right, let's start thinking about a fundraiser, how we can get some money generating to get him going again.
We had 2 fundraisers, one that was done by my church over here.
And the church people came that Sunday to the house and brought food and visited, some of them did. And they helped in a lot of ways, the Christ Episcopal Church.
And they had a spaghetti dinner that they served, and all the proceeds went to us that year. And then also a group of my friends that you know, I just hold dearly, they gathered up some people and got together and put together a benefit. And when I tell you, it was probably the party of the year in Jefferson.
It was very much joyful night. It was almost like Christmas for the town.
We've had these ribs on for a while. We've been cooking them between 275, 300-ish with the hickory wood, which is a little different than the Central Texas profile. So now we're just gonna get these things ready to wrap, and we've cooked them up to around 200 degrees. I like to pull these things when they hit somewhere around 195 to 200. So we've established that they've reached that temperature, so now I'm gonna put them in a single layer of heavy foil.
Okay.
All right, then I'm gonna add on the presentation side probably a tablespoon or maybe 2 tablespoons worth of our rib rub.
More of this rub. Okay,
more of the
so there's
rub.
more rub
yes, sir.
going on.
Okay. At that point, I'm gonna wrap these things up.
No glaze?
No glaze. I'm gonna wrap these things up, and then I'm gonna turn them bone side down and place them onto a sheet pan to rest. And what I've found is during that rest, some of the pork juice and some of the fat will kind of blend together with that extra dry rub that we put on, and it makes a really great glaze for your ribs.
Make its own glaze.
Yes, sir.
Pretty cool.
Yes, sir. And I cook these in these foil pans so it'll kind of braise the bottoms of them.
Right.
So
did you smoke them the whole way like that, or did you move them into the
like
pan?
That, yeah. So
okay.
At this point, I'll tip a little bit of that juice out, just a tad bit, because I don't want it overflowing over there by the firebox.
Okay.
And catching fire.
Right.
So yeah. So I'll tip it just a little bit.
So you want 2 sheets or 4 sheets?
Just 2 sheets.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of loosely just kind of wrap those up, and I'll move them a little closer.
So the business is back open.
Yes.
Business as usual?
Booming.
Yeah.
Booming. Customers were ready for the barbecue again.
Yeah.
And they flooded the place, and we maxed out the pit every day, and we probably sold out almost every day for 3 months straight. During that time, I really was just laser focused, was just putting my heart and soul into every piece of meat we put on that pit. Every ounce of energy was going to making everything just right. And it just kind of gave me a sense of urgency, adrenaline rush we talked about earlier, and just made that bounce back just that much better. As a cook, it really dialed me in on new flavor profiles that we were wanting to try, and it gave me an opportunity to showcase a little bit of my talent.
So you've got your new focus on the food, business is booming. One day in late 2012, early 2013,
Here he comes.
In walks a face that you've seen before.
Yeah, here comes Daniel Vaughn. I think it was almost 1 year to the date of the fire. He'd made a note of my place as one of the places he wanted to come visit. And unfortunately, the week that he had us penciled in to come visit was the week we had the fire. Right. So he didn't get to come out. So he came through just to say hi and see how the rebuild progress was going. He made mental notes of kind of my techniques and my style of cooking. So anyhow, Daniel had let me know that he was going to be doing the research for the upcoming Texas Monthly Top 50. And he said, he would be roaming the state, trying barbecue and writing his notes down, and he would collect all those notes together and compile his top 50 for Texas Monthly.
So I've heard when other people refer to this barbecue as the best barbecue in Texas.
Nah, it's not. No, Texas is a big state.
Yeah.
I want to be in the conversation of the best barbecue in Texas, but to take on that responsibility of being number one, I see what those fellas at Goldie's go through, and the effort and the hard work they put in, and the attention to detail that they pay. And I don't know if I want that kind of pressure.
Okay.
I really don't know if I want that type.
But you're no stranger to this list, right? Like,
stranger to the list.
They're the new kids. They're the puppies on the block, right? You were what, 2013?
We got an honorable mention in 1997 for this barbecue sauce. It kind of went dormant from 97 to 2013 when Daniel Vaughn kind of took up the mantle. And anyway, 2013, I was focused. I knew there was going to be a list coming out, and I wanted to make that list. And I was going to stop at nothing to make that list. Fortunately, we made it. Had a pretty high score, pretty high mark. And I think it was 4.7 out of 5. And I don't think I've ever attained that level of cooking skill ever again. I was on my game at that point. And when we made that started getting us a little statewide recognition instead of just local recognition.
So when you think about the people that have been 97 honorable, 21 honorable, 2 years top 50, like 4 appearances in that list, I mean, that's Tootsie, that's Aaron. Like, you're up in there with some pretty amazing names.
Right.
Is there pressure that comes with that?
I don't feel any pressure like that. I just, the pressure I feel is being a good mentor to the young guys around here that are trying to do the right things, and that's the pressure I feel. I want to be I want to be good for them. I want to set an example for them. I want them to see that you got to put the work in. I want them to put the work in. I want to see them hustling. I want to see them struggle and overcome. There's a couple of guys in East Texas that, man, I think the world of. David Slaughter over in Sulphur Springs, Gabriel Ritter over in Hallsville at the Bodacious there, Brian Wright at Right on Taco, and Brian Bingham over and David Segovia at Sunbird Barbecue, and Brian's wife Kimmy. I think the world of all those people, and I want every single one of them. Damon Granberry over in Tyler, who's trying to make a name for himself, break out, and he's doing a great job. I want those guys to see, you know, that, hey man, I might be the old cat out here, but he's still got 9 lives left, and he's going to use every one of them up. And I want them to push and overcome and be great. I'd rather see them be great than me be great. That makes me happy. That makes me know that what I've done for so long is going to stay here and it's going to carry on.